Good morning, world. So I will give some of you, if you are awake, a chance to jump in, and then I will start talking. Hopefully there'll be some people joining in at this time, just so I can get a little bit of feedback from you guys. Does anyone else find it doesn't matter how many of these things you do, still stay up all night feeling sick? So if I look tired, it's because I am tired. But I'm so excited to be talking to you guys today. I'm so excited for this conference. Haven't had a chance to watch anyone else's videos yet, which I think is probably good for my confidence. And I'm super excited to be speaking with so many amazing, incredible speakers and some of my heroes as well. So there's a couple of people joined already. So for those of you who don't know, so my name is Aimée. I live here in Dubai in the UAE. So the people that are watching right now live are probably here in Dubai already. Or those with chronic insomnia like me. So I own and run Perfect Behaviour here in Dubai, one of only 3 truly aversive-free, force-free dog training and behaviour companies. So I also do cats as well, of which there is only one other cat behaviourist here in Dubai. So I've been training dogs for more than 10 years for my sins. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like a lot less, because the more you learn, the more you realise you don't know. So majority of my experience, I'm just having a look at my notes, that's why I'm looking off to the side. A majority of my experience is here in Dubai, so a good kind of 9 years. So not too much experience training dogs in the UK. I deal with all kinds of behaviour issues. Most typically we see here would be reactivity on leash, or kind of aggression to people coming in the house. So do you ever just start talking and then lose your train of thought halfway through? I have more coffee here, don't panic, people. So yeah, lots of behaviour problems that I deal with: separation anxiety, like I said, mainly aggression towards visitors in the home, and mainly on-leash reactivity to other dogs or to people outside of the home, and quite often those two are kind of generally linked. I myself have, for my sins, 3 dogs and 2 cats, all rescues here in Dubai. The 2 cats are all the house for sure. 2 of my dogs are the reason that I am talking today. So I have 2 Middle Eastern street dogs, or Arabian village dogs, Theseus and Bobby. And I also have a border collie, but she's the easiest dog in the world compared to the 2 boys. I see a lot of these dogs anyway through my cases and through my work, but I have such a passion for them. Really, like, living with 2 of them, it brings your passion for them to a whole new level, as those that have a specific breed will tell you. So I'll go into, and if you have any questions, do shout during the live. That would really help me. So I'll go through what is a village dog. We'll look at their breed traits, kind of what they look like, what they are, maybe what they aren't, and their behaviour traits, which is why we love them. So affectionately here, village dogs or street dogs, we tend to call them arsehole dogs. That's why I love them. So technically an Arabian village dog is a very kind of ancient and primitive type dog that originally went on to be the Saluki over here, particularly in the UAE. Today, village dogs we are aiming for village dogs to become the collective term for, again, what locally we call desert dogs, or the Middle Eastern street dogs, the UAE street dogs. They're also known as wadi dogs. So Bobby is technically, he's my big white idiot. He is technically an Omani wadi dog because he was born in Oman. So we tend to name the dogs after the areas where they were found, but generally they're all they have similar traits and similar personalities, which I will also go over later as to why they have similar traits and whether or not they are genetic or environmental. Obviously, because they are living out on the streets, there are some other breed influences in them, typically the breeds that we see most over here. So we obviously Salukis, so they have a very heavy Saluki influence. German Shepherds and Huskies, every now and again. Occasionally Labs and Golden Retrievers, but very rarely. And this brings me on to the mislabeling of desert dogs or village dogs. And this need that we have as humans to the need for a breed. Now I know a lot of rescue organisations here and in the UK will give a dog a breed to try and encourage people to adopt them. I do feel sometimes this does a big disservice to the village dogs themselves. And to those people adopting, because if you're adopting a dog that you're told is half Saluki, half Labrador, and then you get a village dog in your house, it's not behaving like a Labrador, and that can be quite disappointing. Because they exhibit zero of the Labrador traits, the Golden Retriever traits, that we know and love, and then it can be very hard when we then have to manage our own expectations of and ideals of why we got a dog in the first place. They do have some similarities with German Shepherds. I can assure you they bark infinitely more than German Shepherds do, and Border Collies. So mislabeling or labeling an attempt to, need for a breed, that's going to be my new slogan, I believe, is very unhelpful. So then we're going to come, hopefully I can fill an hour. I can talk about dogs for days. So then we're going to look at breed traits, which we'll start with how they look like. Basically, there is no standard, because they are street dogs. So like I said, sometimes they are mixed occasionally with other breeds, and sometimes it's just sheer random genetics. So size-wise can vary a lot, typically between 15 and 20 kilos. They wouldn't typically top out at more than 25 kilos, because of the desert conditions over here. Being too big is not particularly effective. They can be long or short head. They tend to have a lot of the Saluki kind of feathering, so fluff around their tails and their bums and their ears, or very, very short coats. But they do come with long fluffy hair. Those guys typically don't stay on the streets very long. They don't do well on the streets with all that hair over here in the summer. So a short coat is more genetically kind of viable for, it's not the right use of that terminology, for keeping cool, as is having either a light coat or a sort of darky sand coloured coat. So Bobby is pure white, but without any pink, so he doesn't burn in the summer. Theseus is sand coloured, so you take him out in the desert and he gets lost because he blends in very well, which is convenient for a desert dog, to be able to stay hidden. They do all have this very high tail carriage, Saluki kind of looking tail carriage, which I love. I'm going to touch briefly on health. So the misconception that mixed breeds or that village dogs and street dogs are healthier is a bit of a misconception. There's obviously a lot of inbreeding going on. So we do see hip dysplasia in these village dogs, sometimes very severely. Obviously living on the streets, they can suffer with worms, especially as puppies, and they can suffer with giardia. Giardia is so common over here, and it's, yeah. So this is just kind of anecdotal evidence, but having worms and giardia in very young puppies that we see here on a daily basis, and then having to have antibiotics in order to big doses of dewormers, does seem to do some permanent damage to the lining of the gut. So they tend to have very, very sensitive stomachs if they've suffered with giardia as a puppy. Just realised I got really boring, so I will try and spice it up a bit. But when the fun bit is when I get to talk about the breed specific behaviour. Like I said, the arsehole dogs, which is why I love them so much. So yes. If anyone has any questions, do jump on and give me a shout. Or even once the live is finished, if you have any questions about these incredible dogs, again, drop me a message or just drop a comment on the video below. So now's the fun part. Now we get to talk about their behaviour. They all tend to have very similar traits, okay? It's not coffee, it's wine. No, I'm kidding. They are, all their behaviours that I know and love are generally problem behaviours in the house. These are behaviours that are designed to keep them safe on the streets and in the waddies. Strange noise, I think there's a cat on the roof. They are, I would say 70% of them have some form of resource guarding. They are not designed to be friendly with people. They are designed to be very wary of strangers. They tend to bark first, think later. So their initial reaction is always to bark at somebody, and then figure out whether or not they're friendly or safe. Their first reaction is unless they are incredibly timid, is not to run away and hide. Their first reaction is to bark, in the hope that this big scary thing will go away. And then when you're not scared of them, then they calm down and they relax, and you can start to build a relationship with them. Some of this is learned behaviour. If they've been born in the streets, then there can be a small history of abuse here, which I'm not going to go into too much. I don't want to dwell on the negative things. But also, again, neophobia, being fearful of new things and new people, is a survival trait. It's going to help them survive on the streets and keep them safe long enough to be able to pass their genetic material on to the next generation, which is basically all that aim is. Obviously, if mum is on the streets, she is going to be quite anxious, and she could have worms as well, which, as we all know, having a heavy worm burden can increase anxiousness in her pups. So I'm just reading Sarah's comment, so accurate. Bark first always. Yep. So obviously, if mum is anxious, that's going to pass on to the puppies. You're going to get anxious puppies. So some of it is learned. Obviously here, a lot of people are very fearful of dogs. So when we're looking at their socialization, a lot of people that they're meeting or they are passing in the streets are fearful of dogs. So if a young puppy going out for the first time meets 5 people, only one of those people smiles at the puppy as they walk past, but the other 4 run away screaming, probably going to develop a little bit of a complex about strangers. So there is that environmental element to it too over here. But looking at, so Bobby's litter, he was in a big litter. They all went to 5 of them went to the United States and 4 of them stayed here. And they all exhibit exactly the same behaviours as Bobby McGee. Brain-wise, they are super smart, generally. As with everything, of course there are exceptions. Of course there are desert dogs who are the friendliest dogs in the world and who love everybody. And there are slightly stupid desert dogs. As with everything, there's always exceptions to the rule. But generally, they are crazy smart. But this doesn't often translate to being easy to train. They notoriously difficult to motivate, and notoriously here in Dubai, difficult to motivate. And very much, no, what's in it for me? They are street smart. So they're, as I say about Theseus, he's very clever, but he uses his power for evil rather than for good. There's not a door that he cannot open. It's very annoying. There's not a kennel that he cannot escape from. If he wishes. He doesn't always want to. Sometimes he's perfectly happy. He has an issue with closed doors. It's not that he objects to being confined. It's just that he doesn't see the point in doors being shut. So yeah, very, very street smart, incredible ability to solve problems, and judge exactly how far away you are and whether or not you can get to them before they steal that piece of steak off the side. But yeah, doesn't translate to trainability. Bobby is the exception. And again, there are always exceptions. He is a lot of fun to train, but he gets very anxious, so he likes to be prompted a lot, and he will do it without. He will go through all his routine. Without food, Theseus, despite my best efforts, is still very much, show me the food. In terms of their energy levels, they are so lazy. Incredibly lazy. Which is, again, one of the reasons why I love them. They get up in the morning, 20-minute walk, some breakfast, sleep all day. They tend to wake up around 4 or 5 o'clock, which again, if you look at the conditions here, they're awake early in the morning when it's cooler. They will sleep out the hottest part of the day, and then they'll wake up in the evening just as the humidity drops here in summer, and start to be a little bit more active and to play. Someone's just popped a comment. I'll have a read of that in a second. The good news is, by 8 o'clock, they're back in bed again. They don't wake up until 8 o'clock the next day. So fairly kind of low maintenance in that respect. So Ben says, my experience with street dogs is limited to Bosnia and Romania. Dogs I've counted have been really wary of humans. Some have tended to be more wary of men than women, resource guarding any behaviours they see, bed space. Yes, so yeah, wariness is a big trait. Oh, what am I doing? Wariness is a very big trait. Like I said, neophobia, fear of anything new, because new could be dangerous. New could get you killed. Yeah, typically, as we all know, men are just generally a little bit more scary. Sorry, guys. Typically, apart from me this morning, they have deeper voices. They're much taller. Obviously, as dog trainers, you guys know not to, but generally, my male clients tend to just make a lot more eye contact with dogs and just a little bit more scary. This doesn't necessarily mean that there has been, as I said, abuse from men. A lot of the kennel hands over here are male, so a lot of their interactions, their early interactions, can be with men. But yeah, so that brings me on to the next thing, actually, very nicely. Thank you for that, Ben. Which is their body language. They have the most incredible communication skills. They are so polite when it comes to, generally, when it comes to interacting with other dogs and when it comes to interacting with people. They have a ritual, and they have rules, and if you don't follow that rule, they will be very, very vocal about it. What do I call it? Doggy words. They have so many different words, so many more words than, bless them, a pug or a French bulldog. Even kind of your golden retrievers, your Labradors, my border collie. My experience with border collies is fairly limited because thankfully they're not very popular over here. The reason I say thankfully is because it's so hot a lot of the time, and we have very strict leash laws here, so there's very few places you can get them off leash to have a good run. It's not really the ideal place to have a border collie. Gypsy came up in a rescue and I literally jumped on her and brought her home, but I'm quite lucky she's also very lazy. Or maybe she's just picked up on the energy in the household. So my understanding was that, again, Border Collies generally quite polite in their communication skills with other dogs, and struggled to kind of to understand Labradors and Golden Retrievers. She's got nothing on the boys. In all honesty, even within the house, and Gypsy's been here 2 years now, the boys struggle to read her, and she struggles to read the boys. They don't really speak the same language. They're starting to, or rather, Gypsy is starting to learn their language. They are refusing to learn her language. Such is the way with locals. I'm kidding. I tease. So just their ability to communicate what they need with a flick of an eye, or their ability to try and create space from another dog with the subtlest of lip raises, blows me away every day. Ironically, as I said, this doesn't always make them very good with other dogs, because they don't understand why other dogs don't understand them. And they don't understand other dogs. So like I said, they do very well with other sight hounds. So your pure Salukis, which we get a lot of over here as well. And they do well with other village dogs, with other desert dogs here, because they speak the same language. You could throw 20, 30 desert dogs into a room, and the chances of them fighting would be about 1%. You add another dog into the mix, you throw in a husky or a golden retriever or a bulldog, and there will be a fight. Desert dogs are very vocal, incredibly chatty, as we say. They growl a lot, but that growl is very rarely a precursor to a fight. It's posturing. It's ritualized in the same way as typically kind of wolves use ritualized aggression to manage their relationships within their pack, if we can still use that word. Pack meaning a group of wolves. So they're very vocal. Their growls is not always a precursor to aggression, not always a precursor to a fight. And another desert dog will understand that. Another dog won't necessarily understand that. They also growl when they're happy. They have these happy growls. So you'll be stroking them and they start growling, and then you stop. And you're like, whoa, you're growling at me, and then they'll grab your hand with their paw and push it back down, or nudge you, and you'll start stroking them again, and then they'll start growling at you again. Very, very noisy. They bark a lot. Which again is a survival strategy on the streets. I need to cough. Excuse me, it's not COVID, I'm just very tired. Other kind of communication skills, as I said, they're super, super polite. So any kind of direct eye contact with somebody that they don't know, or a dog that they don't know, is going to escalate immediately. Very, very subtle lip raises. The tail is not always a good indicator when it comes to desert dogs as to their body language. and how they're feeling, because typically it's very, very curly and up over their back. I plowed through that rather quickly. I still have half an hour to talk about these amazing, incredible dogs. I know there's only a few of you still watching live. Does anyone have any questions? Or any more questions so far about Arabian village dogs, or I'm going to call them desert dogs. I like that name for them. And then we'll go through and see what I've missed and just give you some more anecdotes about these amazing, incredible dogs. I knew I'd missed some stuff. So they can be very fussy eaters, surprisingly. Because they're designed to work for their food, they very rarely eat in the mornings, especially if they've not been asked to earn that food. So a lot of people here have dogs in apartments, so they tend to feed their dogs and then take them out for a walk. Of course, dogs don't want to eat when they need the toilet, but two, they haven't built up an appetite, so they can be very, very fussy with their food. They tend to eat more in the evenings than they do in the mornings. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule. Bobby will eat any time of day. Theseus has become a lot more fussy. A lot of the dogs that I see that are fussy eaters also have some kind of anxiety. So I'll go through some of the dogs that I see here, and a few kind of case studies as well, I guess. Some more examples. I want to talk a little bit about their puppyhood and their developmental phases. They reach sexual maturity incredibly quickly, which again is advantageous on the streets. So street dogs live fast, die young. We all know that their main aim is to stay alive long enough to be able to pass their genetic material on to the next generation. Which translates to reaching sexual maturity very quickly. So as I said, these dogs can reach kind of 15-20 kilos, which typically a dog of that age wouldn't, of that size. In a breed, for example, would come into season around 8, 9, 10 months. Village dogs, desert dogs, typically the females tend to come into season between 6 and 7 months, which is very early for a dog of that size. Males mature even quicker. It's not uncommon for kind of a dog of 5 months, 4.5, 5 months to be lifting their leg to scent mark, and to be licking other dogs' urine. Yeah, the rate that they reach sexual maturity is scary, and obviously you have all those behavioural issues related to reaching sexual maturity very, very early. Obviously, as I need to caveat, always exceptions to the rule. So with puppies, they go through 2 or 3 fear periods. Usually very early on. Their socialization window, there's no scientific studies on these, but the socialization window appears to close very early, in line with kind of your German Shepherds, so sort of 12 weeks. Which is again very unfortunate here, because coming off the streets, sometimes, as I said, they have giardia, or they need to get their vaccinations done, so the vet advice is not to go out. Obviously we do have quite a high incident of parvo here, and occasionally distemper, so we would never want to go against the veterinary advice in terms of taking puppies out. But you don't have long before that socialization window closes. So I guess I don't have to talk for a half hour. I could do. As I say, we see a lot of these dogs for territorial aggression, or and it is true territorial aggression. Outside they can be wonderful with people and very, very sociable, but back in the house they can be very defensive. But not always. They can be just generally just very, very fearful of people. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Completely lost my train of thought. So there are lots and lots of breed specific traits. The anxieties that we see, I would say, usually come from their past history, but also from their environment. So Dubai can be a very busy kind of urban area, and we see a lot of dogs living in apartments, which brings me to my second favourite subject, trigger stacking. So we see a lot of kind of very anxious dogs struggling with the noise and the construction that would maybe be doing better in a nice kind of quiet suburban villa. Ben has another question. I love this. So here in the UK, yeah, so there's I like you, Ben. We're on the same wavelength. I was going to bring this up. In the UK, there's been a big trend to save and adopt street dogs from places like Romania, Bosnia, Cyprus, and Greece, and a few other countries. Is there a growing demand from countries like the UK to adopt desert dogs? Yes, there is. This is why this topic I thought was really relevant, because we are sending a lot of these dogs from the UAE across to the UK, and the US and mainland Europe as well. So if you are dealing with these dogs in your working lives, it's important to know them and to understand them. You don't have to love them in the same way as I do, because they're not for everybody. There is a big growing demand. Is there any kind of rescue backup for the adopters? As many have found that adopted a street from Romania that the rescue backup promised. It depends on the organisation. There is one fantastic rescue organisation who does bring not just desert dogs but all kinds of breeds over from the UAE to the UK, and they do have rescue backup. unfortunately, for most of these dogs, as far as I'm aware, there's very little rescue backup if there is an issue. I have done some phone consults and some WhatsApp consults with people who've adopted these dogs from here. Sometimes they thrive over in the UK. It's been a while since I've visited, but it is generally still considered a lot more dog friendly than here in the UAE. So at least the people that they are passing are generally not kind of screaming and running away from them. Yeah, there's a lot of ethics and morals around adopting dogs from another country, and B, adopting these dogs, taking these dogs off the streets here. Unfortunately, the streets here are not safe. And again, there are exceptions. There are dogs that we hear stories quite regularly of dogs literally sort of jumping into rescuers' cars and going, "Take me home with you." So it does happen. But yeah, the ideal would be a fantastic TNR scheme with a tagging system and rabies vaccinations in place. The UAE is a rabies-free country, but we have a few countries around us we're a rabies-controlled country. So we haven't had any active cases in many years. But I don't think we can be classed as rabies-free because we're not on island. I don't know. You'd have to do some research on that. Don't quote me on that. On my rabies knowledge. But we're a rabies-controlled country here in the UAE, but countries around us aren't necessarily, and they do have a high incidence of rabies. So a rabies vaccination program in place. Unfortunately, for lots of reasons, the streets aren't really a safe place for these dogs. So sometimes we do need to kind of sort of round them up and get there somewhere safe. But some of these dogs would be much happier living out on the streets, being fed 2 or 3 times a week. Some of these dogs don't want to be cooped up in an apartment this is very controversial, but don't want to be cooped up in an apartment in a busy urban environment. Their welfare wise is completely forgotten the word, but yeah, their welfare is affected. Their welfare is reduced living in those kind of environments versus out on the streets if they were to be safe, if that makes sense. One disadvantage to taking your desert dog to the UK and to Europe is it's cold. They will need a jumper. I guess a few other of the behavioural issues that I see. Sometimes, so Bobby and his litter, for example, their mum died when they were 3 weeks old. So they were kind of essentially hand reared as a litter for the other kind of, I think up until they were rehomed at 12 weeks. So you have the environmental sort of aspects of that as well. a lot of the, I'm trying to think of some recent cases that I've seen, but they all tend to kind of blur into one. So I do have one dog who is half Arabian village dog and half husky, and it's like there's a line down the middle of the behavioural traits. So the anxiety comes, so the family initially fostered mum and all the puppies. The escape artistry, the disliking any kind of handling, having their collar grabbed or even held, comes from the husky side of things. The anxiousness, the fearfulness towards new people, new experiences, is pure village dog. And it's this poor dog is constantly in conflict. The village dog telling her to be cautious of new things and afraid of new things and new experiences, and the husky going, nah, come on, we can do this, it's great. Bless her, but she's doing very well. They hadn't done any formal training with her, so just giving them a clear communication tool with her, as in, you do this, you get rewarded for this, you do this, you don't get rewarded for it, and you get removed from the situation or whatever. And that's my elbow. That's made a big difference to her. She's a lot calmer now that they're a lot clearer in how they deal with her and their instructions to her. Stephanie's just jumped on. Except for fear issues, I have noticed a lot of resource guarding in the desert dog mixes. Is there a connection? Yes. So again, when we look at free-ranging dogs, we know that they don't form packs or family units in the same way as wolves do. So bear with me, I'm going to give you a bit of background and then I'll address the resource guarding. So they have just kind of loose groups that they hang around with for safety. So dad will come in, do his thing, and then he'll go away again. He won't have anything to do with raising the puppies, despite what we'd like to think as people. And mum can, in fact, as we know, have 2 or 3 different dads to her puppies. So they're not a family unit. They don't share a meal in the same way as a wolf pack would share a kill with each other. So they are very possessive of their stuff. They find food, it's theirs. They're not going to share it with another dog. They have no investment in helping another dog survive to pass on their genetic material. Quite selfish in that way. So resource guarding is a genetic trait that's going to help them survive on the streets, which is at the least a pain in the bum in a home environment, at the most incredibly dangerous. They will guard food, they will guard their space, very protective of their space, especially if they're tired. They don't like to be disturbed or moved when they're tired. This is a very, I know there are other dogs out there and that obviously don't like being disturbed when they're tired, but this is a very village dog trait, very specific village dog trait. They will guard anything that they perceive valuable. So I said the territorial, they will guard their people. Bobby guided Theseus for a long time, and he still will. They are very quick to jump in and defend another dog. If they don't like that dog. This actually happened yesterday. I was teaching a group class, and another dog arrived late, and one of the dogs sort of started growling at that dog because he was very uncomfortable with him, and immediately the other desert mix, who is the sweetest, most amazing dog with other dogs, jumped to defense of the other dog who was growling by barking and kind of standing in front of the dog who was growling to defend him from the new dog that was coming in, even though they'd only met about 10 minutes ago. They weren't friends. They were pretty much just ignoring each other. I have another example with Bobby. He's generally very sociable, but we had one particular issue with one dog. And we were out for a walk, and we happened to come across each other, so we gave each other lots and lots of distance, as far away from each other as possible. And that was fine. And then this other dog started barking at a construction worker who started walking towards us from a distance. So this other desert mix started barking, and Bobby, who hated this dog with a fiery passion, decided he was going to join in and start barking and would protect this dog at all costs. And it took us about 10 minutes to calm our dogs down that day, which was very unusual, but it took us a long time to get them to relax and to be quiet again. And we were still 50 meters away from each other. So they will stand up for their buddies, but they won't share food. They are just not genetically designed to share. This kind of resource guarding behaviour, I didn't know Bobby when he was a puppy. I adopted him when he was around a year old. But I was sent some pictures of him at maybe 10 weeks old, and he's got a cow ear in his mouth, and you can see him growling at his brothers and sisters. So yeah, this resource guarding behaviour can kick in very, very early on, if we are not incredibly careful. Sometimes even you can be incredibly unfit and incredibly careful, and it will still appear. So for example, we know, we as dog trainers know that the golden retrievers and Labradors tend to be prone to resource guarding because they tend to pick stuff up, and we keep taking stuff off them, and eventually they turn around one day and they're like, nope, I don't want you to take this off me anymore, and they start guarding it. Typically, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, typically with golden retrievers, we have, unless they're very badly bred, we have some leeway before that resource guarding starts. Like, they are a little bit more forgiving. There's no leeway with desert dogs. There's no if you're not swapping their stolen items and their items that they have that you've given them, if you're not doing your resource guarding protocols from a very young age with those puppies, it's going to go wrong. Oh wow, I did manage to speak for an hour. I'm so happy. So I've got about 5 minutes left if any of the people watching have any other questions. Otherwise I'll just do a really quick summary. Hopefully my passion and love for these arsehole dogs, as I call them, comes across, and do you know what? I disabled my messenger, my Facebook messenger, because I was getting a lot of client messages and they were just coming at me from all angles, but I'll turn it back on again. Because if anyone has any other questions about these street dogs, which I've been working with now for nearly 10 years, then feel free to get in touch. So breed specific traits are all traits that are designed to help them survive on the streets. So you have to come at it as there is a very heavy genetic component to it. Of course, there are exceptions. They are incredibly smart, but not easy to train. They're also very lazy, which is also fun. They tend, like I said, their most active time of day is in the evenings, around 5-6 o'clock, and by 8 o'clock they're fast asleep again and ready for bed. Incredible range of communication skills with dogs and with people. They're very polite, so if you don't introduce yourself in the right way, whether you're a dog or a person, it's not going to go well. And they are incredibly unforgiving. They have elephant memories, which again ties in with this fear of new things, this neophobia, and this the drive and desire to keep themselves safe long enough to pass on their genetic material. So if you're introducing yourself to a desert dog, to a village dog, and it doesn't go well the first time, it's going to take a really long time to get yourself back in that dog's good graces. One bad experience for a dog, for a desert dog, they don't have the forgiving streak that certain other breeds that I see a lot have. One bad experience for that dog and that's it. Thirsty Pups, Theseus had a negative experience at the vets when he was 6 weeks old. Theseus came to me at about 4.5 weeks old, having been picked up off the streets and then sold as a German Shepherd puppy to some poor unsuspecting lady who had no idea what she was getting herself in for, and thankfully she made the decision to rehome him. So he had a very negative experience at a poor choice of vets on my behalf, at about 5 weeks, where his vaccination was incredibly painful. And I did my best to help him overcome it, but that has just kind of escalated into a general fear of vets that I am working on, but it's going to take a long time to get there. And again, it's really specific. He's fine going into the clinic and he will greet the vet nurses and he will greet the receptionists with a waggy tail, and the second the vet walks in, and it doesn't matter what that vet is wearing, he could be wearing a suit and tie, he knows that is the vet. And he just doesn't like him. I'm running out of time, and I think there's somebody speaking. Is there somebody speaking after me at 5 o'clock in the morning in the UK? I'm not sure. But I am, having gone halfway through to going, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, I've managed to fill it for another half an hour. I just want to say a big thank you for those that came in live, and a big thank you to those that are watching the recording of this, if you make it this far. Huge thank you to Ruby for putting this together is such short notice, and pulling this off. And if you ever decide to bottle that energy that you have, then please let me know. I'm willing to pay for it. And thanks so much for watching, guys. And yeah, like I said, drop me a friend request if you want some more information about these dogs, or I'll re-enable my messages so you can drop me some messages. So I've been Amy from Perfect Behaviour here in Dubai, and I hope to see some of you soon. Bye, guys.